So by the very nature of what they're trying to achieve, they have to rely on really shady characters, okay? And they're not very good strategists, but they're very arrogant. So they're the checkers crowd. And that's Dick Cheney and his gang. And then you've got Iran. And they play chess. And they're very patient, okay? And they're very careful. And regardless of their, insane leadership out in public, the reality is he doesn't run the country. They're very patient. They're very careful. And from day one, I kept saying, if you attack Iraq, you are giving Iran a gift. And I think Israel was very much concerned about this as well, which is why they likely agreed to join forces on Iraq, provided that there would be no threat to them from the Iran side. So it's funny. I remember when people thought that Kissinger was a double agent for the Soviets. And it's funny now when you think that, wouldn't it be interesting if Cheney and those guys were really, knowingly or unknowingly agents for Iran or the Saudis or, any number of, look at all the people who benefit. It's not us.
Right, yeah. Well, it's everybody but the American people and the Iraqi people who benefit, it looks like. And maybe the Turks.
And it's not Israel either. Israel's put in more danger and is under more scrutiny now because, there's misconception that it was Israel that drove the United States policy in Iraq, which isn't true. They were always interested in Iran. So you've got Israel that fails, you've got Britain that loses, you've got the United States that loses, but look at Iran and Russia. Iran, Russia, and China.
Well, I think, wouldn't you agree that the Israelis actually did benefit from a stupid point of view, that is to say a Likudnik point of view, and that the largest single Arab state and would be most powerful Arab state has been smashed. And even if the even if the Iranian-aligned Shiites end up dominating the country, they still mostly only dominate their part of the country, and I guess including Baghdad, but they don't control Anbar really. And Iraq has kind of ceased to exist, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, but that's the thing. Iraq was keeping Iran in check in some ways, and by eliminating Iraq or
but you're being smart. I'm asking you to be a Likudnik for the purpose of the, because I think anybody would agree that all of this policy is bad for Israel. Every single bit of it is bad for Israel, but that's not what Richard Pearl thinks, is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, but Richard Pearl doesn't work for the Israeli government in terms of decision making. I think what you're talking about is you have to remember that as powerful as Israel is, it is still a client state of the United States. And it doesn't have a lot of choices. If the United States says, look, we're going to war in Iraq, then Israel's going to have to be on board. But Israel can demand, and likely did, that if they do that, they have to ensure that they take out Iran too, because then Iran's left standing as a serious threat. So I don't think they had much choice. They are a client state, so they're doing what they're told by the, colonial master, in essence. Yeah. In terms of Iraq, not Iran. America was driving the Iraq train and Israel was driving the Iran train. So, but what I've always thought would be interesting is, the biggest winner out of all of this is Russia. And it's beautiful irony if you think about it, the way it works out. We defeated the Russians by getting them stuck in Afghanistan.
Yeah, well, I've always argued that it would make perfect sense if our entire political class were a bunch of KGB agents. I don't really see the proof of the connection, but I guess I wouldn't be surprised if it turned out that they were all a bunch of traitors.
Well, I'm vehemently anti-Putin and his gang. Violently, vehemently, And the thing is, if you look at what's happened, it's remarkable. You've got a totalitarian government in Russia that's looking like the most beautiful democracy. It's got the world respect. Putin is the sane one. And here you have what was legitimately a democracy look like
the Soviet Union.
Yeah, and we have lost all the money. We've lost our military has been incredibly degraded. Our country's falling apart. People are in poverty. We're becoming the Soviet Union. And to me, like if if I was Russia and China, and I wanted to create a new bloc and destroy the United States, I would create a trap in the Middle East to do it, you know? And this is possibly why I've always said, I almost wonder if the Russians aren't involved in some of this really elaborate, siphoning of, funneling of intelligence and such.
Well, they could be, but if I was Vladimir Putin, I'd probably just be sitting back and laughing and keeping my hands out of it.
Really?
But you're certainly right that America's losing, and that's good for any potential adversary. And you're also right that Russia looks good in comparison only to the United States right now because of what our country's been doing around the world.
Well, and more importantly, Russia controls oil now more so than it's ever controlled in Europe.
All right, wait a minute. Now, I want to wrap up this interview with a couple of more points about how Bush knew he was lying. And these are the names Naji Sabri and something Habush.
Wait, let's be careful.
Here.
We don't know if Bush knew he was lying. We know Cheney knew that he was lying. Whether or not Bush knew anything is not something we have any, one way or another, any proof of.
Well, we have what seem to be at least credible stories about George Tenet explaining to George Bush that he had flipped and turned Iraq's foreign minister, Naji Sabri, and that he had verified that they had absolutely nothing, and that the CIA had vetted. Tyler Drumheller told this story, that they had vetted the hell out of everything he said, and this was credible information. They don't have anything, Mr. Bush. And then it turned out that they also had flipped this guy Habush, or the Brits had flipped this guy Habush, who was there. George Tenet was Iraq's head of intelligence, who told the Brits the very same thing.
Right, but okay, now you have to remember who we're talking about. You've got George Bush, who is inherently not going to, he's already entering office knowing that he's going to distrust the agency. So George Tenet, and he's a Clinton layover. So Tenet tells Bush this, and what do you think Bush does? Bush meets with who? Who do you think he likely meets with? He meets with
Cheney.
the National Security Council. Cheney,
Rumsfeld.
Elliott Abrams, Rumsfeld. So you've got one guy that is Tenet, and then you've got Rummy, Cheney, Abrams, Wolfowitz. You see my point? And they say, well, no, they just don't want to, they could. Bush isn't such a capable thinker. He's not educated in terms of military history or strategy. He's going to think, okay, this is what Tenet tells me, and he goes to probably find out if, he's not someone that's going to, and if you try to pull this stunt with, let's say, with an Obama administration or with Obama, you brief him, chances are the guy's going to know something about what you're talking about, especially if you consider the Biden factor. Biden would be able to very clearly know what was BS and what wasn't. Bush, on the other hand, he was not remotely qualified to be president. And so my guess is no matter what was told to him, I guarantee you he went and discussed it with Cheney and his National Security Council, which were all Cheney's gang. And who knows what they said. So we don't know if Bush knowingly lied. We do know that Cheney knowingly lied, but we don't know if Bush knowingly lied. And I think we need to be very careful there. I mean, yes, he's an idiot, but did he actually knowingly lie us into war? I don't know.
Well, yeah, I think it's clear just from going back to all the statements that he made, as you pointed out, long before September 11th, saying we are doing this. And then when September 11th happened, then they said, oh, well, in fact, here's a lie where he knew he was lying. Was they would ask him, this is what Colonel Sam Gardner called the excluded middle, where they would ask George Bush, why Iraq? And he would say, because of September 11th.
Right, but you've got Cheney telling him.
Because it changed the way we view the world, and now we see. But he would give you that giant pregnant pause where you would just fill in, because Saddam did September 11th. And he knew that was manipulative and that he was trying to buffalo the American people into believing that Saddam had brought those towers down.
Look, I'm no George Bush fan. I mean, that would be hilarious if somebody actually suggested that. But let's be very careful here. The reality is he's parroting, just like he's too stupid to understand that when he's told you've got to repeat something to catapult the propaganda. He actually repeats catapult the propaganda.
Right.
You know?
Look, I'm not going to sit here and argue that he's too smart.